Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bitesized Podcast. We are so excited to have as our guest a veteran of the digital marketing industry since 2005, Cory Morris, who is a leader and achiever. And I just love how you describe that about yourself, Cory. You've worked in an agency role and had been inspiring many brands and people, and included in your role of leading Voltage and working within the Kansas City community and beyond. You've also been able to contribute your knowledge to many, many online outlets. You're also recognized as Kansas City's Data-Driven Marketer of the Year, which is so cool. So congrats on that recognition. I think your mission to elevate others definitely is a mission that resonates with our FMO Media values as well. And you have a book coming out. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about you in your own words, about your book. Let's dive in.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to our conversation today. The book is exciting. I'll maybe start there. It's been a big focus going back to the fall since I locked in with a publisher, and it should be out mid-year. Going through round 3 of edits right now, but what really started as an opportunity for me to share openly what our process is, what our initial strategy and planning process is. It became a lot more personal because I unpacked a lot of different stories that really shaped my career that I glossed over. They were just experiences, but I didn't really realize the impact and so many implications of like a dozen different stories of things that brands have gone through, spent a lot of money and with agencies, with Google and with other places, and not gotten the return or gotten burned. And so in many ways, it is accountability for my team, hopefully some accountability in the industry. And if it saves any potential client or brand out there, whether they work with me or not, from making some of those mistakes that I've seen so many times, that's really my goal with it. And it's gotten through a lot of those stories a lot more personal as I work through the process than what it originally started out being, more of a logical based book and content topic. But that's a big thing for me. But in terms of the book, that's a place where I would point people to the Digital Marketing Success Plan or the DMSP.com. But that's in addition to my day-to-day role running the agency here at Voltage.
That's awesome. I love that you highlight you're including the storytelling aspect, because that's something that we love and value. And a lot of marketers talk about that too, right? The storytelling is really the key to helping share your value and connect and build relationships with others. Is that something that you see working within your plan and your strategy as well with clients? Does that have a place in the SEO strategy as well? Because I don't know if we necessarily extend it or think of it in that area and aspect, but I'm curious if it plays a part and has a role.
It definitely does. In fact, a lot of the content in the book, like the guts of it, are around the START planning process being an acronym, the steps to work through. But that's kind of a boring, cold process, a lot of technical things, a lot of steps to work through without the context and connection. So in parallel to that, and going maybe in a different direction to your question, when it comes to when you're ready to do digital marketing, and especially things like search or anything where you're trying to get someone to your site, it's important to have your brand strategy, your product development, your sales operation established, and in place to be ready to invest and see that return on investment. You can spend a lot of dollars, as I mentioned a minute ago, in Google or trying to get positioned well in Google, but even if you get the clicks, whether you're paying for them or they're free, quote unquote, in organic listings, which they're not really free, there's a lot of investment there to get there. That if you look just like everyone else, you're using the same language, it's challenging. And in fact, I know that personally because I've gone through that in the agency space. We morphed from a creative agency to a digital agency in 2014. We rebranded, but And that was narrow and specialized enough back then. But in the last couple of years, we realized that we sound like everyone else again. We
Mm.
all, and that's across any industry. It's easy to start sounding like a commodity or not have a unique brand voice or be memorable. And depending on if you haven't layered your message to how someone's searching and where they are in the funnel from, I don't know, I have a problem, I'm trying to figure out what the problem is,
Yeah.
how you're searching in question format, whether that's to a smart speaker or in a phone or in a desktop, Google search, all the way down to I've been through it and now I'm just shopping and I'm ready to take action. So whatever it is, be able to differentiate, unless price is your key differentiator, and in most cases we don't want it to be. It's being able to be different on whatever front. And so storytelling and being found in the right moment and being that resource is key. All those things can happen. That funnel can collapse and happen all in minutes, but most of the time it's over days, weeks, months, and B2B potentially years. If you're seeking a service or a solution, you're already embedded with something else.
I am so glad you said what you said in the way that you positioned it, because what I heard too, or part of what I've heard, was that at the end of the day, like, what you decide is your brand, and it really connects with SEO and how people are going to find you, and the kind of people that are going to find you, the kind of people that you want to find you online at some point, even 2, 5, 10 years down the line. So that is huge. That was a huge nugget that we've already gotten into. We're only 1 minute in. Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It's a great reminder that your strategy, your digital marketing strategy, does not live in a vacuum either, right? You have the other areas, the other functional strategies of the business, which all have to be aligned, and your marketing strategy has to support that. And if you are looking at it in isolation, if you're not paying attention to your value proposition, what does set you apart, then that could be really damaging. And similar to what you're saying, Cory, you're going to waste a lot of time and money as well if you're not aligned there. But I'm curious, over the years, we've seen a lot of shifts in technology and how people are consuming content online. What's been a dramatic change or any kind of change for SEO strategy and how people are navigating those changes?
The constant in SEO is change, just like it is in so many other digital marketing channels, from, paid search to social. And so whether it's changes in, networks or mediums, but specifically we focus on Google so heavily in search and in SEO specifically. And I go back to 2005 and think about the things that everybody was freaking out about then, and how many times people have written articles that SEO is dead or dying. In fact, I wrote one last year for Search Engine Land and tried to make sure it wasn't seeming like a clickbait headline. But basically, whether it's in changing search guidelines, making sure that context matters more than keywords, most of the changes over time have been positive. There's some things like taking away data from marketers, like keyword specific data, or when things aren't very transparent from Google and how they work, and unfairly when you're not, doing things that are really risky, still not understanding why somebody is ranking ahead of you. If you're playing in the middle of the sandbox or trying to have a robust and diversified SEO strategy. But there have been so many changes, so many things that were going to kill it, from voice search to the changes in the search layout pages, and now it's AI, obviously, and we made it a few minutes in here before I mentioned AI. But what's interesting is the trend had started years ago, of less clicks from the search engine results page before AI emerged. Direct answers, with Google having the answer box up there and Google pulling in a lot more data and answering searchers' questions without sending someone over to a brand's webpage, was already a concern. And I say all this knowing that, AI is changing things. And I've talked multiple times with colleagues over the past year who are like, well, you're still really heavy in SEO. And my answer to that often is, no matter what changes, if SEO finally does die and we move into like optimizing for AI or search generative experience or large language models, any of this, either SEO will adapt like it always has, or if it becomes a dated term and left behind, stays more narrowly organic search and we do something else, the challenge will always exist that there are brands and organizations out there that have a target customer or audience and they want to be found. In fact, that was a working title for my book early on, was Be Found. But it was a little bit too generalist and not tactical enough or applicable enough. But basically, I mean, that challenge will exist. And so for me and for all of us in digital marketing, it's all about, finding the balance of what works today, but not burying your head in the sand and ignoring what's coming, but also not going too far on the other end of the spectrum and chasing the shiny objects and taking your focus off of what's working today for your brand or for your clients as well. So yeah, the constant of change doesn't bother me. It will, unfortunately, like so many other things in the past, maybe, push some people out who can't keep up, and also welcome new people or bots into the space.
What do they say? Innovate or die.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's been true forever.
Yeah.
Always say please and thank you to the bots, just in case.
It's true.
I joke a lot about, the fact that before we get, we're going to, we'll have nuggets of really smart things and really cool things, but we're going to see a lot of junk too. Like my example is like, if my refrigerator is going to try to be smart and do my grocery shopping for me, I'm going to guess that there's going to be a lot of fine tuning, or I'm going to have like 12 gallons of milk show up based on things my kids do or don't do and putting it back, or right. So there's going to be a lot of things that are bad or junk as it catches up, but it's obviously accelerating rapidly.
Absolutely. And, I would hope that the human decision making element, the human intuition and creativity is still understood as important as we're using AI too. Because you and I have had a conversation, Cory, about, trusting but verifying. And along those same lines, you have to be the one that's managing and prompting the program, because it needs that prompt. It needs that proactive management to actually work the way that you need it to. And then still at the end of the day, you need to tweak and fine tune, like you're saying.
Well, and when it comes to things like content, even, I mean, if everybody's using AI for content, it can be good or maybe even great, but if everybody's doing it, then it almost becomes another layer of commodity. And that's a challenging one too, right? Where it's, if everything starts looking the same, even if it's in different wording, even if it learns our brand voices and whatnot, it's just kind of being factual, and it may lack some personality, or it may take and run with personality and go way too far in some cases and make up things. Again, I'm fully on board with where we're going, and exploring it and staying up with it. But being a realist, it's like down the middle. And when you come to SEO and what I look at over the years, problem solving and solution finding is probably the biggest characteristic of anyone on my team or in the industry, and the biggest trait. If it helps us obviously scale and go do things faster and more efficiently, or even bring us smarter insights, that's awesome. But ultimately, at the end of the day, SEO is not just SEO. It's actually the title of an article I wrote recently. And because it requires IT, UX, content, if there's any level of regulatory or legal or compliance, there are all these different factors that go into it beyond just someone with an SEO title. But the person with the SEO title needs to understand how to navigate those, because often there are a dozen different ways and avenues to take that could be right to get to what you need to, navigating it in your unique organization. And so until brands and companies are okay with just turning everything over to AI and letting it make all the decisions, as long as there's layers of other things there's a role for someone to help navigate that and troubleshoot when it doesn't go the way you expected it to, or if there are layers of organizational bureaucracy to it.
Definitely. And I'm glad you mentioned, there are so many different ways to really optimize for search engine, right? But speaking of one of the ways, right, we're a digital marketing company and we focus heavily on social media. How has that taken a role? How can brands kind of optimize their social media for search engine optimization? I know there's a lot of different ways. Over the years, I've seen social media pop up when I'm searching for a company, etc. Sometimes even before their website. So, what are some ways that people can, kind of keep their brand optimized, on different social media platforms?
Yeah, so whether you realize it or not, you're bringing me into an age-old debate in SEO circles
Ooh.
about the influence of social and on search. I go back to I believe it was SMX Advanced in Seattle in maybe 2008 or 9 when Rand Fishkin was on stage unveiling like the periodic table of elements for or ranking factors as part of search engine land's a brand new kind of chart and infographic based on their research of what goes from SEOs of what influences ranking. And it got really interesting when we got into the social category, and it was a conversation about causation versus correlation, and Google and Bing at different times even said contradicting things and contradicted themselves, where it does have a place in the algorithm or it doesn't. In fact, I did a probably 2014 presented to the local social media club here on this topic, and it was exhausting going through the number of times and quotations where they went back and forth saying whether there were social signals in the algorithm or not, or if it had direct impact. And you even could parse words, and it was almost like they were lawyers in how they used words around whether it mattered or not. But what we do know, all of that aside, is there is correlation data, and it continues to exist, showing that a more robust social media presence, more engagement equals higher rankings. And again, not causation, not saying you do that and it's naturally going to do A and B will happen, but brands who invest there, and in many cases it has common elements and investments with content being at the core piece of it. If content's great or brand engagement and brand aspects are great on social, they're probably going to be great in search as well. And so being able to invest one time and have something work across multiple channels is a holy grail to get to anyway for digital marketers, instead of having to manage all these investments in different channels and have them be separate strategies across the board. And so some different things that to make sure that you get credit would include making sure that it's very clear, your links on your website are very clear of what social profiles you own. Simple things like making sure things are linked properly. You have links and citations on your social profiles back to your website. And that is much of, if not all of your social content, unless it's a closed community or a group, is able to be seen by search engines without having to be, if it's locked down. And we've all been to a brand Facebook page where it's like, wait a minute, I wasn't signed into Facebook, and now it's bound, somebody sent me a link and they're requiring me to be logged in to see a lot of the content. They haven't thought about the privacy settings, and it was just by default or not really thought through. So being able to have your content be visible is step one. Google and Bing have gone back and forth over the years on whether they get data from the fire hose, from the API, from the social media networks versus not, and how they include it in their search results versus not. But we know they can see it. We know they crawl the web. They can see everything, and whether they incorporate it directly or not, or will tell us, directly or not how they're using it. We know they can see it, and we know that again, investing in your social strategy, and specifically making sure things are linked well, visible, and that you are investing in great content. As well as paying attention to what the search results page looks like will help. Also, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot more objects and noise in the search results pages. But some of that is your brand, like box or panel. So you definitely want to go claim that, own that, because that's another area where you can go in and edit your social media handles. You can do it in Google Maps. You should definitely own your Google business profile there and make sure social is connected. So anywhere that you can connect between the search engine and social media, what your owned properties are, and be consistent with that. Consistency is key as step one. And then step two is obviously make sure your strategy includes some great content and engagement, so it plays out everywhere across digital.
Definitely. And for anyone that's listening too, I believe that the social, linking the social on your Google business profile, that's pretty new within the last year. That I saw, and I was like so excited when it popped up. I'm like, yes, finally, because this is what I care about. I want people to see all the socials. So that's huge. If you're a business owner listening to this, take a look at your Google business profile, make sure it's claimed, and make sure you link all your socials on there.
Well, and especially if you have a new website, when I think about it on the SEO side, like I just launched a site recently for my book, and I'm like, Google has to find it and understand what it is. So I was reminded of my own recommendations. I'm like looking at my Twitter profile and LinkedIn. I'm like, I need to go get this in there. And even if you can't put a hyperlink to something and have it actually be linked, just mention it in text, mention the URL, because unlinked brand mentions are also a signal as well. I have to be careful when I say something's an absolute, but they're considered a ranking factor, much like links are directly. So there's a lot of opportunities of creative ways without stuffing your bio or stuffing, a caption or whatever, to get some mentions out there, especially if it's public content.
Good to know.
That is really smart. And I appreciate not mentioning any absolutes, because it could change in a moment's notice, right?
Well, and I'm not here to create a debate with my SEO community colleagues either over how I technically said something, when the consensus might be 80 or 90%, but I'm here to talk about what to do, and not necessarily the mechanics of why and what it's rooted in.
Well, I think that's important too, right? Because most people have questions on, how do I get started? What do I need to do in order to optimize for my company, my brand, my new business, my new book? So what are some steps that you would encourage people to take, on the most basic level, or this is what you need to have that strong foundation for if you're just starting to really build that presence?
Yeah, going beyond what we talked about earlier of knowing your unique brand propositions, your identity, and being ready to, having your house in order and being ready to invite the public and the world to it. Getting started. I mean, there's three in SEO specifically. There's three categories or pillars to it that I would call them, of technical, on page, and external or off page. So technical is making sure that your site can be found and indexed by the search engines. So make sure you've got Google Analytics or whatever your favorite analytics package is on it, so you can measure. Add the script or tag, set up a Google Search Console account, because that'll allow you to send signals to Google that the site exists, it's here, come find it, as well as giving you feedback on performance and things to fix. In terms of page their Google page experience factors that they care about. Some of those are how fast your pages load. So, I mean, some of this you can manually see if you're sitting here as a human and you're like, my page is loading slow. You probably need to dig into it further, but you can go really deep and nerd out with free tools and Google's Lighthouse tool stack and other places if you want to get really technical. In many cases, these are things that can be resolved pretty quickly by if you're not the technical person, by someone who's your IT contact or web developer, or even within the platform. If you're in WordPress, you have a lot of tools at your disposal, or other platforms as well. So technical, you can spend a lot of time in there, or you can spend very little, but there are small things there. Like if your site can't be indexed or found by Google, it doesn't matter how much content you invest in, if it won't be indexed, or you accidentally have a command in your robots.txt file telling Google to not allow it to index anything. So there are a couple small things that are really important that take just seconds to get right. But at the bulk of where a lot of companies spend their time is investing in the on-page layer. And so that would be in starting with great content. I love it when a company comes to us and for SEO help, and they've already got really good dedication to their content and have a really good base of content, because that can sometimes be the hardest thing to get stood up and get and a muscle to build and discipline to have is to mine that expertise out of subject matter experts and to be able to build out. If there's great content, then now we're fine tuning it and looking at competitors and what they say and what's at the top of Google for certain keyword searches to make sure that we look at and shape what we want to put out there, or our take on the topic to get there. So finding the discipline for content is important. And then when you have it, it flows down from there. And some of the content could be your blog content, your thought leadership, your top of the funnel, but also more of your bottom of the funnel and your evergreen pages, your service and product pages that may not change very often. Going back and revisiting a lot of those as well. The third pillar is the external factors or off page. This is where social media that we just talked about might come into play. Signals from not in your website, from external sources that provide validation for you being a subject matter expert. Links from other websites that we talked about momentarily, or even unlinked brand mentions. So if you have any level of PR or media exposure, or anywhere that you're getting, or that you have relationships, if you're part of a local chamber of commerce, or getting your business profile linked back to your website, all those external signals from high authority websites and sources, including social, pointing back to your site, give that external validation to help Google understand that this is a very real business validated by their community, not just someone overnight. Like if I overnight wanted to be the top plumber in Kansas City, and I know SEO, I could probably write a lot of fake content, have AI help me, and maybe put up the most beautiful content-rich site out there, but nobody's going to link to me. I'm not going to have any reviews or ratings anywhere, or any external validation. I'm not going to have a link from the trade association or whatnot. So Google will be able to see that I'm fake, or try to see that I'm fake. Hopefully it will smoke me out.
That's so funny. I think not a lot of people do this, but it's like, can you trick the algorithm? It's like maybe for like a couple seconds, but long term, no, there's got to be legitimate links out there coming back to you and showing that you are real.
Yeah, the beauty of it, much like what I mentioned with having great content for social and having it play well also for search, is in a lot of cases, those links will come. If you have things that go viral or great resources, like you have an awesome, like unique calculator tool for your industry or whatnot, and people are naturally linking to your resources, you don't have to go out and do research and go beg people to link to you. There's still a place for link building as a strategy, and you can go mine who links to your competitors and go find link sources and opportunities. But if you're investing and want to do it smarter, not harder, the great content you produce and whatever strategy you have in promoting it, hopefully will attract naturally a lot of those links and that affinity to it. And again, you're investing in one place, hopefully, as your cornerstone, instead of having to invest in all these aspects of SEO in addition to all the different siloed aspects of other channels if you look at them separately.
That's so many great nuggets of wisdom and information for everybody to understand. And I love that you mentioned the word discipline too, because it takes time, right? And consistency. You mentioned consistency early too. So I was curious, if somebody's coming to you and they're looking to get started with SEO strategy, what kind of time frame do you give them? Because in anything, you have to have that patience, I think. But I know everybody wants to be able to distill it down into milestones and goals and, look ahead to have that game plan. So how do you like to navigate and help people through that?
Yeah, we first start off with shameless plug. We've already talked about, but making sure you have a plan and a solid strategy. So having a digital marketing success plan. And in that plan, we're not just looking at search, even though we specialize in just search and websites. We're putting social media on the table. We're putting, programmatic. We're putting email and all the different other digital channels and opportunities out there to make sure that we're not short-sightedly just looking at search. But when, if search is right and has the right opportunity and the right ROI math out there, and they're just getting started, there's always been this hesitancy to make promises in SEO. And in fact, it's rooted in or becomes an excuse for SEOs to say, well, Google says based on Google's guidelines that I can't make guarantees or that violates their guidelines. That's true. But that's not a scapegoat for saying I want no accountability. One of my early stories in the book and really that changed my career was having a client, or as I was just starting out in SEO, where I had everything green and up and to the right in their graphs, even conversions look great. And we sit down for a meeting and he's like, well, that's great, Cory. But he was a lawyer and he's like, even with those conversions and those phone calls and form submissions, I didn't get a single case. So I was crushed because I had this perfect, beautiful report, thought we were just crushing it, but it didn't map my KPIs into business outcomes. They were to marketing metrics or marketing KPIs, not business KPIs. And so getting that right and understanding that there's a market and what the opportunity is and compared to all other opportunities that might be out there is number one. But when you know that search is right and you have expectations around it of what it could return on investment, then you can set those milestones. So I'm giving you a very variable answer, or nuanced answer. But traditionally you'll see some quick wins just by just starting out and getting some technical things right and getting some content out there. If you're starting from zero, you should see some quick wins or see activity and movement in the first few months. If you're in a really, really competitive space and if your house was not in order at all and you've got to go through and re-architect a lot of stuff with your website and do a lot of content, some of that may push things out to a year or 2 years, or maybe that keyword is so challenging and it's a stretch goal, it may be 10 years. But the byproduct of getting the longer tailed and other tangential results that you'll get from the effort and not just solely focusing on one thing, one metric, will pay off shorter term as well. And so having a robust strategy, understanding what ROI looks like and what the needs will be and resources needed to get there are absolutely critical, but it is definitely possible to map it out. And so I call BS on when people say, I don't want to commit. You just got to pay and invest and we'll figure it out as we go. You don't have to figure it out as we go. Yes, there is optimization, there is iteration in it, and it won't always go the way we planned, but you have the ability to know and to get deeper and to make a wiser investment. I equate it often to, this is not an expense, or you don't want a vendor relationship if you're hiring a contractor or an agency or even who you're hiring in-house maybe to do SEO. You want to understand that you're making an investment, and investments, whether I'm working with a financial advisor personally, I expect a return on investment and data and a prospectus and their expertise to guide me, or I'm just throwing money away. And so that level of accountability is important, and the discipline to stick with it, even if you're self-implementing and going through it. or wearing multiple hats and you're doing an SEO role among all other digital things or even broader things in your business, making sure that you stick with it and you set goals. And it's not something you get excited about for a week. You do a whole bunch of stuff and then you get busy. And then 3 months later, you come back. Having accountability there is important too, because you can be disappointed at the end of the year if you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I just cost myself another 8 months because I didn't do anything the last 8 months.
I love that. Go ahead, Mel.
No, and that does happen, right? I think that's the biggest thing, especially with small to medium-sized business owners that maybe don't have a budget to hire someone, or maybe haven't put that budget together, right? Because prioritization. And, they're just starting out and they think that they can just do something, but having that consistency, wearing so many different hats in a business, sometimes you need to pay someone to keep you accountable, if that makes sense. So that's a huge thing.
And unfortunately, there are so many, again, I don't say this to trash my industry, but there's so many agencies, so many consultants. It almost feels commoditized where we're all saying the same thing, speaking the same language, but results will vary. And so finding the resources externally or even your own process internally to have accountability built to it, and ROI is the focus, is guidance. And in some cases, it doesn't make sense to do it. Just do the good content. Hopefully the pieces, you'll get some trickle down effect from having great content. But if it's one of those things where if you can't be consistent or you're kind of investing here or there, but not able to leverage that investment, don't let it get upside down or burn you.
Great advice. Awesome. I think we're ready for our quick fire quiz, right, Mel?
We are. All right. So this is one of my favorite parts. And, thank you so much for all the knowledge that you've given us and the deep knowledge. Now we get to know a little bit about you and how quickly you can think on your feet too. So
I think this is my favorite part.
Right. First of all, we always need to know, cats or dogs?
Oh, dogs. You can't see my dog bowls in here, but for sure.
He's there?
He's not here today. He's
okay.
very attached. So he would be sleeping on my feet, or I would walk out of my office, and with enough meetings today, he would be barking or chasing me around, or he would go find every trash can in this office that doesn't have a lid.
What kind of dog?
So he's a golden doodle.
Oh.
Which we didn't know if we'd be able to have a dog because of my son's allergies, but he is truly hypoallergenic, and he is royalty in our family, it feels like at times.
That's awesome.
He's very spoiled.
Good, as he should. I mean, look.
Yeah.
Above Rebecca's head too. This one, Apple or Windows?
Apple.
Yay.
I felt like a 5-year-old when I came to Voltage as an employee years ago before I went through the purchasing process of it a few years ago. But when I came here in 13, I had only been Windows my entire life and career. I felt like a 5-year-old figuring things out, but now I can't go back. Got everything perfectly synced up from messaging to iCloud to everything between Mac, iPad, phone, watch.
It's just so efficient. Yeah. I love it. Yes.
Streamlined.
All right. Coffee, tea, or energy drinks?
Ooh, I'm not on the energy drink bandwagon. I was during my night classes for my MBA for a little while, but definitely the coffee. It's black coffee in the morning, cold brew in the afternoon. But I do love over the past year or so have gotten into iced tea.
Okay, like homemade iced tea.
Yeah, like fresh brewed iced tea for sure. So there's a pitcher in my fridge at home.
That is, add a little bit of lemonade in there for a twist sometimes.
Absolutely, as it warms up, for sure.
Weekend in the cabin in the mountains or on a tropical beach?
This is a hard one because I go both ways. And if you see the pictures behind me, you'll see mountains in Colorado as well as on the beach. I think I default to the beach because of the scenery and just be able to relax. especially now my kids are a little bit older and I don't have to be chasing them around in the water to make sure they don't eat sand as a toddler. Uh, but I enjoy. I mean, I've been out in a blizzard in Breckenridge and hike different times of the year in Colorado too. So I have a heart for both.
That's great.
What's your favorite time of the day?
I think I'd probably say, I mean, outside of work, it would be on work days, it would be evenings and time with my family. But if I'm thinking about work days and when I'm in my zone, it's definitely mid-afternoon. I'm not a morning person, but I accept that I have to deal with mornings and be productive. But it seems like if I can get clear of meetings by like 2 or 3 in the afternoon and have like 3 to 5 or 3 to 6, I can get more done in 2 hours than I can get done in a whole day.
I love that. I can totally relate. I'm not a morning person, but I accept the fact that I have to deal with mornings. I'm going to make sure that that's quoted on here.
Yeah, especially if I could open a window and just turn on music and power through.
What's your favorite board game if you're a board game person?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I feel like the board games with a 13-year-old and 9-year-old have been geared toward what they want to play. Everything from like Clue to Life to whatever. I would say right now, even though we don't play it as often because it requires so much like focus and we have, I'm very competitive. But I always have sports or whatever on TV in the background. I have to be locked in to play Clue and want to win it. So maybe that one compared to some of the other puzzle games or the things I get frustrated that I can't just win quickly. And, my son's like putting all these puzzle pieces together and I looked away for 2 seconds and whatnot. So, but Monopoly and Battleship. So you probably see how my brain works here if I talk about that as my favorites growing up.
Couple different strategies to implement in those. This wasn't in the quickfire quiz, but do you let your kids win, or do you really give them some competition?
I don't. I don't, and I won't. Whether it's basketball in the driveway where we're playing 2-on, the kids are teaming up on me, and it's 2-on-1 or whatever it is. I'm going to try to make all those shots. Now, I may not go drive to the hole on them every time or block all their shots, but I'm not going to pull back when I'm shooting from 3 or whatever else and miss it on purpose. I'm going to get the shots up.
Good. What's a talent that you have that most people don't know about?
Oh man, this is a good question. It's what I think the one that surprises people in my family or maybe with my kids, and I won't say some of the current versions of video games. I play a lot of things, a lot of modern video games, but where it surprises people is when we jump in a Mario Kart or an old school game and how even if I haven't played it in 20 years and my kids started playing it, constantly for a week, that I can just still come in and just beat them.
All right. There's the competitiveness coming back in. What is a cause that's important to you?
Right now, and what I've tried to work through in my career, as I mentioned earlier with the book, is making sure people don't get burned. I see people, individuals, I see companies giving up on certain things or assuming the worst after 2 or 3 bad agency experiences, bad hires, bad experiences with media platforms or whatnot, giving up on it. As an opportunity or an avenue to their success. And it sounds very capitalistic, but at the same time, I don't want anybody giving money to big tech or other companies if it's coming out of their pocket or if they're an entrepreneur and it could have been better invested in their community, their business, their family, or their employees. So while it started, like I said, down a very kind of objective path, it's become more of a purpose and POV for me than I thought it would. So that's where my head has been recently, but there are a lot of different causes personally that I love to support, everything from things related to my faith to pets and dogs to foster care and even to opportunities in athletics with different nonprofits and things that we sponsor and support.
That's awesome. I love that because if it's not, one of your passions, then why are you doing it, right? So that's huge. What's the first thing you would do with a sudden lump sum of $1 million?
That's
What's
yeah.
the first thing you would really do?
I would I I am so deep into like managing finances in my personal life and with the company and investments that I would do very boring things with it.
Oh.
I would start talking to my tax strategist and my financial advisor and figure out how to whether it's debt or investing short and long term. I mean, the exciting thing is if we connected it still with that part of my brain that looks at investing, it might be to buy that beach house or whatever.
Okay.
So but there would probably be some return on investment or connected to it.
Airbnb it out while you're not there.
Exactly.
And last two questions. One, what's heavily played on your music list right now?
What's crazy is I go from all across the spectrum on music, and if it's based on day or mood. I've been listening to a custom created Spotify list that I made maybe 6 months ago of music that I went through and tried to remember the first like 100 CDs I bought. So it's like 90s. It's probably like 93 when I bought my first CD up through maybe '02. So maybe a decade. And it's all just alternative rock, rap, maybe a little bit of country sprinkled in, and it's pop too, and there's a lot of pop punk in there, a lot of different things, and it's just this massive list of thousands of songs from the CD era, as I put it, which makes me nostalgic and sad that it's gone at the same time, or how old I've gotten.
Look, I'm going to tell you this. My husband still has his collections of CDs from the 90s and 2000s era.
Oh, I have most, if not all of mine as well.
You do too. All right. He's not the only, I'll let him keep it, I guess. He's got a special box for it in the garage.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll probably tell him to make a Spotify list like that. What's one of the best pieces of advice you've ever received?
I would say probably the most applicable and one to share is about being decisive and not getting stuck. I'm someone, as you could probably tell from how I answered the question about the $1 million is I like to plan, or even the topic of my book. I like to plan. I like to have predictable outcomes. I'm not overly controlling, and I can accept that there's nuance and variability to life, to marketing, to everything, but overthinking things or getting stuck and inaction has risk attached to it as well. And so inaction in business and in life can lead to unforeseen circumstances as well. And in fact, there's my VP has brought out a quote about I'd rather be I'd rather, I'll get it wrong here. I'm trying to remember the exact quote. I used to have it written on my board here, but about being wrong now is better than being right never. And so there's so much that we do that's optimizing or testing, or even just taking a step or a risk and stepping out, even if it's a small step, to get out of comfort zones, to take that next step. And even if you don't have it all perfectly buttoned up, predicted and right, be able to get unstuck in taking a step is key.
I absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much, Cory. And thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to get your insight and your knowledge and hear what you're up to as well. Thank you, all of our listeners, for tuning in to the Bitesized Podcast. Cory, where would you like people to find you online?
Yeah, there's 3 ways. If there's anything I can ever help with, no strings attached, no sales pitch. We don't have any salespeople here. We're all just strategists and nerds. It would be voltage.digital is our agency, where we do search and web as our focus. I have a personal site, Cory Morris, Corey, Morris.com, for any speaking, consulting opportunities. And then the book, the Digital Marketing Success Plan, or the DMSP.com, is a great place to go see, find out more about that, and subscribe to be notified when it publishes later this year.
I love it. I already subscribed, so I can't wait to get that notification and to dive in. Thank you again, Cory. Thank you all for listening for another episode of the Bitesized Podcast.